this morning. We'd like to get started right away. Bradshaw loved books in her local library as a student. One of 10 children. She grew up in Delphi, Indiana, small town, surrounded by fields of corn. Every Saturday morning she would walk to the library, hang out in the stacks, then check out the maximum 10 books allowed. In college, Chris studied for a year in Sierra Leone, a country in West Africa, then hitchhiked through Western and Central Africa. She fell in love with the people, but felt overwhelmed by the challenges facing so many people living in extreme poverty. What could she do about it? She didn't know. But Chris is here today to talk about what happened when she went back to Africa in 2004. She was riding around on top of a horse. Please welcome Chris Bradshaw, founder and president of the African Library Project.
Am I live? Oh, so live. Good morning, Sperreng Middle School. I'm so excited to be here. You know, I want to start by teaching you something that they teach in Africa. So you're going to learn the same thing that a lot of kids there know. And it's a cheer for when you really like something. And one of the things I really like about Sperreng Middle School is your librarian. Do you like your librarian? So this cheer is for Mrs. Sears. Yes. Okay, here's how you do it. I'm going to say kilo, and you're going to go woo! Okay, you got it? This is a kilo for Mrs. Spears. Woo! Very nice. But you guys totally rock it, especially in Missouri. I just love the spirit that I see in Missouri schools. Your teachers are fun and creative, and there's a lot of school spirit, and when you get behind something, you totally get behind it. And I really am in love with Sperreng Middle School right now, so this kilo is for you, and I'm going to have you give it to yourself, and you're going to point to yourself. So kilo for Sperreng Middle School. Video about the African Library Project to just give you a little context about where your books are going and what it's like there and what the need is. So,
Africa is booming and life is challenging. In Lesotho, a tiny mountainous kingdom in southern Africa, half of the people live on under $1 a day. HIV/AIDS is everywhere, and life expectancy has dropped to 36 years of age. In Swaziland, 1 in 4 Swazi adults are HIV positive. Yet, Africa is filled with hope. Despite the fact that 40% of adults in sub-Saharan Africa cannot read or write, African students are eager to learn. Even 5-year-olds will walk for hours every day to go to school. But most schools have few books or none. They have classrooms, students and teachers, and a chalkboard, But students learn mostly from listening, and teachers must teach from memory.
The African Library Project starts and improves small libraries in sub-Saharan Africa to promote literacy, education, and self-determination. By organizing a book drive, any American from ages 5 to 95 can make a tangible difference in the lives of Africans one book at a time. By collecting 1,000 gently used children's books and raising $500 in related shipping expenses, American communities are creating hundreds of small libraries that fill a huge void in Africa.
One of the targets of our library project is to make sure that at one point everyone in Botswana should be able to read, and life will be very, very easy. They will be reading about all sorts of them, not necessarily HIV and AIDS, but that would make the rate of HIV and AIDS go down.
16-year-old Kananelo Molamani is a high school student in Lesotho. Her teacher recognized the girl was bright but unmotivated. When the new library opened, Kananelo poked around, then began to read all kinds of books. She especially loved stories that expanded her vision of who she was and who she could become. She read a teen book about a girl that struggled to overcome challenges to go on to college, and Kananelo decided she could do the same. She began to study in earnest, and for the first time, began living up to her potential. Now, Kananelo is on track for college. Mantua, a 9th grader, lives at the high school in a dorm cottage with 3 other girls. Because she is the most brilliant girl in her class, she won a scholarship. It pays her school fees as well as her dorm room fees.
I like doing the mathematics because I'm good at it.
The library is a quiet sanctuary where she can read books in English from the African Library Project and help the teacher librarian. Sometimes she walks the 2 hours to her home on the weekend. She helps with the cooking and hauling water.
Hey,
Her mother and grandmother are very proud of Mantua.
I would like to be a nurse. Why? I would like to help sick people.
It absolutely surprised me that teachers had to teach with notebooks, because I can't even imagine that. It's just such a different world from the opportunities that we have here and from the luxuries that we have here. I'd never really thought of books as a luxury, but they really are. I did a book drive my sophomore year of high school. It's really intimidating at first because you're trying to raise 1,000 books and $500 to send them abroad to another continent, and it sounds really daunting. But the support that you find in your community is just incredible. We were able to triple our goal, and it really felt good to be able to be a part of that.
I've always loved reading, and it's been my favorite thing for as long as I can remember. So when I heard that kids in Africa didn't have any books to read, I was stunned, and I could not imagine what life would be like without books. So I wanted to do something to help, and I ended up getting 3,500 books to start 3 libraries in Africa. It felt really great, and I felt that I actually made a difference in the world. Creating libraries made me open my eyes to the world around me, and I think before I had started the libraries, I wasn't really aware of the world around me. I was just living my everyday life like a normal person, but now I see like there's so much more to life. It's really about giving to others that makes life worth living.
The African Library Project is opening the doors to a brighter future for tomorrow's African leaders.
Tomorrow, I will be the president, I will be the teacher. Because of reading, I will go to countries overseas. That's a nice thing for a student to do, reading. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor so that I can do surgeries and help people, even build up health centers.
I would like to be a president.
I want to do law when I grow up. I like to be a teacher. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a social worker to help people with their problems. And I know that many people think that they want to read, but some of them just think that they want to read because for fun. But me, I don't think reading is for fun only. It's for what you want your future to be. Reading is what it will take you very up in the sky.
Join us in changing lives, book by book.
Thank you. Yeah, you like it? Yeah. Nice. How many of you donated at least one book for the African Library Project? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to show you coming up this story. I'm going to tell you the story about how we got started, because we're about libraries and we're about stories and we're about books. So I thought no way better than to tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a family. In fact, this is a true story, and it was my family. We decided to take a trip to Africa. We went pony trekking, which is like horse packing, in a teeny tiny country of Lesotho. Lesotho is this teeny tiny country, and it's very mountainous and high. In fact, it's a kingdom, and there are no roads in the middle of Lesotho. There's no electricity, there's no running water, there's no video games, there's no television, there's none of that kind of stuff in the center of Lesotho. We were noodling along on our horses, and my son, who was 13 or 14 at the time, he got tired and bored of riding his horse. So he did his favorite thing. He pulled out a book and he started to read. It made me think about libraries. Along the way, we saw kids walking to school, because of course that's the only way they get to school. And sometimes they half an hour to 2 hours to get to school, one direction. They do that twice a day. And they do that to go to schools with no books. We met lots of kids who were on donkeys as well, because that's another way that they get around. They have a lot of fun, and they are a lot of fun. They're wonderful, warm kids, even though they may not have a lot of the luxuries that we have. A lot of kids there are herding sheep or herding goats. That's how they can spend almost their entire life, because their whole family's fortune is wrapped up, that's in their goats or their sheep. So they might just be watching 5 or 6 goats every day. You find lots of 25 to 30-year-olds in high schools there, because they still haven't had a chance to finish even their elementary school education, because this is the way they're spending their time. This is a traditional home, and it's actually a very nice home. It's well decorated with all these stones. And this is a traditional looking family that you see everywhere. They wear a blanket around them. It's very cold in Lesotho. A lot of people think of Africa as just hot, but this is a very high country, and they're just coming up. We're coming up on summer, and they're coming up on winter, and they'll have a lot of snow. Their schools will be closed because of snow in the winter. Where should I be so this doesn't happen? In front? Yeah, okay. This is the kitchen. Most of them, all of them are outdoor kitchens. This is a couple of ladies on their way to school. And what are you bringing? Lunch. They are bringing lunch. And here it is. They bring it every day, and it's beans. And it's the same lunch every day. And for most of the kids, this is their one meal a day, which is another incentive to go to school. Does that look good? Maybe for one day. Here's my son, who got tired of riding his horse, pulled out his book. And this made me think of libraries, so I asked our guide, libraries in Lesotho. And our guide thought about it for a while and said, I think there is one in the capital city. One library in an entire country. I couldn't stop thinking about that. I really couldn't. I'm on my horse, I'm noodling along day after day, and all I can think of is all of the books in this country that we have that won't even fit on our bookshelves. Does anybody have that problem at home? Yeah, and they're filling up our landfills. It's actually an environmental problem in the United States. And when I went back to the village, I talked to the head man and said, ever thought about a library? And he said, we have always wanted a library, but we had no idea how to get books. And I said, well, a library, and boy, the librarians know this, it's a whole lot more than books. I said, you gotta have the space, you gotta have furniture, you gotta have a librarian, you have to have somebody that knows how to organize them, and you need a committee of people that are dedicated to making sure that those books get used well over the long term from one librarian to another. I said, if you can do that, I'll help you get books. 2 months later, I contacted them, and they said, the building is half done. The building is half done? We had a 15-minute conversation. They really wanted a library. So I started to get the books together. And while that was happening, they decided to give the project to a Peace Corps volunteer. Do you guys know what a Peace Corps volunteer is? United States, a lot of people, mostly young people, but not just young people, volunteering for 2 years to go to a developing country somewhere in the world and give their time to both learn about the country and to share what they know. Peace Corps, wonderful United States program, and it really is for peace. So they decided to give it to a Peace Corps volunteer. She came, and it turned out she was a retired librarian. That was a coincidence. So now, what we do with the African Library Project is we turn places like this into places like this, and that's what your books are going to do. And that's going to be an amazing thing, because most of the schools where your books are going, they maybe only have had 5 to 20 books before. The teachers are teaching from memory, and they learn from teachers that are teaching from memory. So we got that? The teachers just teach from memory. That's their only resource. Okay, let's start learning about the libraries. I thought you might take a little tour of our libraries throughout Africa. We have a lot of them, but I just wanted you to know a little bit about each country and how they might be different. In Botswana, there's no furniture. Did you notice that in the video? There's no furniture and the kids are lying on the ground. That's because they want the kids to be comfortable, so they just put a rug in the carpet, and they don't put furniture in any of their libraries, at least at bookshelves, but no tables and chairs. Here's one in Malawi. Here's one in Swaziland, and this is where your books are all going. All 5 libraries that Sperreng is starting are going to the country of Swaziland. There's one in Lesotho, the country that I showed you where we first started. And here's one in Ghana, which is one of our newest partners. And I don't have any pictures from Sierra Leone. This is our first year. We're just right now working on a container of books to go to Sierra Leone, so we don't have any pictures yet from Sierra Leone. What happens when you packed up all those books? Somebody in a truck come here? Did you guys go by truck? I think. They went by truck to our warehouse in New Orleans. And then they went from there by train to this huge port in Charleston, South Carolina. Then they went by ship, container ship, in one of those containers to Africa. And then when they get there, they go into a port. Yours would have gone into Johannesburg, South Africa, and then they would have gone by truck to Swaziland. And here is Swaziland. It's another tiny country. Right here. So tiny, but it's a lot like Lesotho in that it's very, very mountainous. And once they arrive, here's the container in Swaziland. They get unloaded there. Now, we're going to learn a little bit about Swaziland. These are traditional homes in Swaziland. And you see the mountains? It's a gorgeous, gorgeous country. And they have a king. Actually, is the only absolute monarchy. Absolute monarchy means he gets to call all the shots. It's left in Africa. Even though Lesotho is also still a monarchy, but this guy really gets to call all the shots. His name is King Mswati III, and he has a lot of wives. He has 14 wives because Swaziland is polygamous. And he has, I can't remember how many children, I think 70-some children. But, I mean, you might think that's a lot. You might think that's a lot, but his father had 125 wives. So he's pared things down considerably, and his father has over 200 children. This is the way a lot of the schools look. They have a sign outside, and this corner, this little edge, is the way a lot of the schools are, with a metal roof like that. When we come and visit the schools, they are so excited, really, really excited, and jumping up and down excited. And this is a traditional school. You see a chicken out here. There's usually some animals running around in the schoolyard. A lot of the schools in Swaziland Swaziland has the highest HIV/AIDS rate in the world, and half of all of their people that are like 20 to about 30 are infected with HIV/AIDS. And there's about a quarter of all the children in the whole country. Like if we just went from here over, you would all be orphans. That's how many orphans there are. And so this is so overwhelmed their traditional family structure that those children are now, a lot of them live in the schools, and the schools all have farms where they're growing food and raising animals to try to support the needs of all the orphans. Oh, that, by the way, that's the kitchen at the school. And this is a student who is making lunch at this school in Swaziland. That's a little different than here, huh? And here's some girls that are playing a game. I don't know if you can see that they've marked out in the dirt, they've marked sort of like hopscotch or something like that. We watched them play, it was really fun. This is one of our libraries, and the woman on the right, Noguleko Biluli, is one of our partners in Swaziland. She's an absolute phenomenal person. We actually nominated her to be a CNN hero this year. She's so incredible. And next to her, on the left, is the principal of the school. And she is wearing the traditional dress that you find in Swaziland, which a lot of people still wear that. And this thing that she's got on her head, it's not like her real hair, it's like a wig thing, but it shows that she is married. Now, here, Mrs. Spears told me that, like, somehow the people in St. Louis really like their sports teams. Maybe you are fans of sports teams? Yeah. got to go to. The Warriors were still in there. But in Africa, they do not compete so much on sports. But when they compete, they're just as passionate about their teams. Their teams are dancers and singers. They compete in dancing and choirs. So they are amazing when it comes to singing and dancing. This is a boys' dance team that actually performed for us. And you can see, you'll notice they're all in uniform. The kids in Africa, almost all of them wear uniforms. And there's the dance team in the front, there's the choir in the back. And part of one of their traditional songs that was always danced to is one where the guys compete to see how high they can get their leg in a kick. So that's what you're seeing here. And these girls are also wearing their traditional dress. And they have the same thing going on. They also compete to see how high they can get their legs. And ladies, I gotta tell you, we are in that little war. Okay. Now, how's a library different in Africa? How are your books going to be put to use differently than the books in the library here at Sperreng? First of all, their libraries have small, simple systems because 1,000 books, which is what was said for each library, it's not a lot, but it's about 1,000 books more than they had before. And they use these colors to code their books. And they just put a different color sticker on each book, and that's how they organize their library. We found that classroom libraries, putting a small classroom library in each classroom, especially in primary schools, is really effective. Do you guys have books in your classrooms here? A little library? Yeah. No, and yes. Well, it's an innovation for them to have a little classroom library. And the kids get instant access to the books. There's another little classroom library. You can see this book next to it. That's their registry for the books, and that's how they check books in and out, that book next to it. Here's another classroom library. They didn't have the money to be able to build shelves, so they use fruit containers. They're very good at figuring out whatever. And here's another classroom library. And imagine the classroom that library goes in. I've seen classrooms made out of chicken coops in Africa. This is pretty awesome facilities we're in, I gotta tell you. Every one of the libraries that we have has an HIV/AIDS, this is native language, sorry. They have a native language section if there are any books in their country that are printed in that language. But most, like in Botswana where they speak Setswana, there are very few books, but there are some books actually published in Setswana. In Lesotho, the country where we started, and we now have over 300 books, 300 libraries, there still is not one single bookstore where you can even buy a single used book in the entire country. So, there's no books published in Lesotho where they speak Sesotho, and one person is in Lesotho, and all the people are called Lesotho. This is a culture corner. Almost all our libraries now have a little corner in the library where they build a little low wall. Most of the buildings there are round, like I showed you, and so that represents like you're going into a rondel hall, a little round house. And in that area, they put traditional weapons and clothing and artifacts and food and household items. And that becomes like a little mini museum inside of their library. Their library is like the cutting edge of technology for them. It connects them with the rest of the world for the first time. And this connects them with their traditional past. And much of Africa, they are losing their traditional culture very quickly. So this is a very important thing. Then they invite elders to come in from the community. They tell stories in this area. The kids will write the stories down, and then they'll put them on the library shelf. So they are also preserving their traditional past and traditional stories. And Africans are fantastic storytellers. Their tradition is oral storytelling. This is a culture corner in Swaziland, and again, you can see they're wearing their traditional Swazi clothes. But you also can see they're wearing warm things under there because it gets cold in Swaziland. They have an HIV/AIDS corner in every section. And one of the things that we do is we raise money to ship a series of fantastic HIV/AIDS children's readers because it's so difficult to get the facts about HIV/AIDS, and it's literally killing the populations in these countries. We also have helped a lot of orphanages get libraries. This is the principal, wait, where's the story? Yes, this is the principal of this school out there doing the laundry. Different job for principals too. This is a snack corner. They love those little baby board books. Love them. And they take the baby board books and they put them in a special area and they call it the snack corner. And the librarians encourage every child to read a snack before they get their main selection. They have teacher librarians. You are so lucky that you have dedicated librarians here. But there, we train teachers to become the librarian, and they have this job as well. And usually they train almost everybody, all the teachers in the school become sort of a librarian because they all get trained in the techniques of how to help with the library, because the teacher librarian usually can only be there for maybe an hour after school, but all the rest of them, when your class goes into the library, you are sort of a teacher librarian. They have rules, we have rules. Can you see the second rule? If you steal or tear the books, you will pay. That is because it is so, these books are treasures. They are highly treasured by Africans. They are, like if you think about, I don't know, what would we treasure? Gold bars or diamonds or something like that. That's how they treat these books. They really, your books are going to be treasured. Now I'm going to tell you, you guys have an amazing story, really, of doing 5 libraries. It is so amazing. But I want to tell you a couple of other stories that I have found really inspirational. These are 3 little girls in California who, they were 9 years old and they decided that they wanted to do a book drive and start a library in Africa. So they collected, but they wanted to do it without any help from any adults. They called me on the phone and they said, "Can we meet with you?" And I said, "Sure." So we set up an appointment. They brought in 2 legal pads, 2 pages, legal size, of single-spaced questions for me. And they would not let in their mother, any adults, into the room. They wrote all the answers down. And then they went back to their school and they collected 9,000 books and raised the money to ship 4 libraries to Botswana. They were 9 years old. That's pretty awesome. I don't know what they're going to do when they're 10. These are first graders from a Montessori school in San Jose, California. And these kids had a Japanese teacher, and there were about 15 out of the 20 kids in their class were immigrant kids. Mostly Hispanic, and they came from countries where they really knew the value of books because they didn't have very many of the books they came from the countries they came from. So on Friday, their teacher pulled them together and said, "We finished our book drive, we've got 1,000 books, and next week we're going to figure out how to raise the money to ship our books." Monday morning, one of the kids walked in with a Ziploc bag of enough money, $500, to send their library. They spent the weekend going door to door in their neighborhood, knocking on doors to their neighbors and saying, "Did you know the kids in Africa don't have any books? And our class wants to change that. Would you please help?" 6 years old. Isn't that awesome? So, these are the libraries that Sperreng Middle School are starting. There's St. Loretta's, Matseni, Inkabaneni, Nikonyeni, Makapaneni, and that's 5 libraries. I hope it's the first 5 libraries that Sperreng Middle School does. But I want to do another kilo for Sperreng. So, I would just like to thank from the kids in Swaziland for doing extra books, and from the African Library Project. I come from California just to tell you this, how much we appreciate your efforts at Sperreng. And we are presenting to you, Mr. Eggers. We're presenting Sperreng Middle School. The global this is actually is for all of you. You guys are accepting it on behalf of all of you. A global literacy champion. Sperreng Middle School is being named a global literacy champion today by the African American Library. So, we have also a very special announcement today. You have no idea how special Sperreng is to us. Can you, like I haven't really mentioned, I think I mentioned that we're in 10 countries now. But how many libraries do you think we've done? 100? Who can guess? 200? 500? Today, we are celebrating the 1,000th library, and you did it. Yes. Are you going to video?